Now at this point, we're 22, 23 years old, and they're talking about getting a colon removed. And we're like, that can't be what God has for us. So we're Christians first, we're disciples of Jesus. And in our mind, we're like, God has a better plan for us than a life full of chronic disease.
Are you inundated with information about how to lose weight fast, how to be healthy? You feel the way I feel about this. Today's episode is a breath of fresh air. In fact, I bought a copy of this book, Designed to Heal, for every one of my staff because its approach is simplistic, its approach is biblical, its approach is refreshing, and today you're going to walk away with some practical, biblical ways to live a healthy lifestyle and eat foods that God designed. Give me your top 3 foods that we should absolutely avoid. They're like the inflammation of inflammation. You've already mentioned them, but I just want to review it. If these guys are going to go, okay, what do I need to cut out of my diet today? What are the first things you would tell them? First 3 things.
That's a great question. I think.
Hey guys, I'm excited to have Alex Morgan on today. Alex, it's great to have you on the show, man.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've read a lot of health books over the years, and yours was Grassroots. I thought it was really good. I'm just going to jump into this because I've got so much to ask you about this book. So you wrote this. In 1996, an estimated 8.5 million Americans suffered from an autoimmune disease. In 2019, that number was up more than 50 million. The CDC says that 6 out of 10 adults in the U.S. have a chronic disease and 4 out of 10 have 2 or more. So you give us that stat, then you ask this question. So what are some of the big differences between our lives and those of our ancestors? And that is the place to start. So let's talk about this. Why did you write this book?
Yep.
And what are you hoping it brings to humanity?
Yeah. So I wrote this book basically out of necessity because my wife has ulcerative colitis, which is a disease of your colon where you have inflammation in your colon. It creates ulcers in your colon, all kinds of symptoms from fatigue to bowel discomfort to lost weight and just kind of general discomfort, pain, etc. Not able to digest food, not able to absorb nutrients. And so her body basically, this is right at the end of college, and we're dating. I'm about to get engaged. She gets diagnosed. We kind of, ignore it per se, just kind of let things play out, live our lives normally. She gets some medicines and thinks it'll be okay. We get married a year or so later, and right after we get married on our honeymoon, things kind of go ballistic of sorts. They just go from bad to worse. We come back from the honeymoon, and she's like bedridden for a couple of weeks. She can't go to work. She can't really do anything at all. She's just totally like incapacitated. And at that point, we realized that something had to be done, right? She'd gone to all the doctors. She had been doing the medicine. She'd been adding new medicine. So at this point, she had kind of an oral medicine, a suppository, an injection that she had moved from the kind of initial stage of bi-weekly to going every week. And they were talking now at this point, we're 22, 23 years old, and they're talking about getting a colon removed. And we're like, that can't be what God has for us. So we're Christians first, we're disciples of Jesus. And in our mind, we're like, God has a better plan for us than a life full of chronic disease, chronic medication, surgery that gets your colon removed, like a major organ, when you're in your first quarter of life. So we started asking questions, and she really dove in. She found a nutritionist. She found like a naturopath, natural doctor, and just started kind of gathering information and trying to figure out what could be done, what other paths there were. Of course, she was also asking her medical doctors these questions, and they kept telling her the same answer, like, food's not going to change anything. It doesn't matter what you eat whatever you want. It doesn't change anything. Just keep taking the medicines. And we're like, I don't know, this doesn't feel right. She's getting different answers from the natural side. Eventually, she decided to commit to what she did was called the specific carb diet. So the SCD was the acronym there, which basically just took her diet down to like ground level, started from scratch, very simple, plainly cooked, whole food, like 5 or 6 to start ingredients like boiled chicken and green beans and that sort of thing. Very applesauce, very easy to digest, and starting from scratch, and then one by one adding new foods, and kind of seeing how your body reacts. But like the big key pillars were organic, whole, real foods, staying away from grains entirely, not just gluten, dairy, especially conventional dairy, and then also refined sugar, which that's the biggest one and probably the most challenging one, right? We all love sugar in this world, but she just totally cold turkey stopped all the sugar and those things as well. But over time, we started to change our view of food, and it wasn't just like, oh, she has to do this diet to help feel better, but she actually sort of had this view of food of like, wait, God designed the food that now this diet is making me eat. It's just from the ground, from the animals that God made for us. And he actually designed that food to help my body flourish. And when I eat it and eat that, instead of the things that the world kind of tells us to eat, I feel better and started to kind of move in that direction of healing. And it took a long time. It took dedication. But over time, I think it was 3 or 4 years, she ended up getting off all of her medication, is entirely in remission. Now, she had a colonoscopy at one point where they said that if they had seen that colonoscopy at first, they would never have diagnosed her with ulcerative colitis in the first place. So, the doctors were telling her food wouldn't do anything. And then here we are seeing a complete remission and healing, and not just like benefits in that one realm, but just benefits in general, like feeling more energy, feeling me. I'm also in this story eating mostly the same foods once you kind of got past the initial steps, and I lost 20 pounds. I wasn't trying to lose any weight. I didn't think I needed to lose weight, but I'm like, oh man, I just, without even trying, it just dropped like that. So yeah, all that to say, we had the story. We felt like we needed to share it because there was so much wrapped up in her physical health and our spiritual health, because we realized that God was wrapped up in all of it. Like God's involved in everything that we do, and eating food is something we do a lot. We were eating 3 meals a day. We're spending lots of money, lots of time on food, and so we started to think, maybe we need to. I don't think we have heard people talk about how food can be involved in our faith in any sort of substantial way. And so that's why I thought writing this book was worth writing. One that I wanted to share kind of with the world.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I got a random email from a guy. I read a lot of books. I got a random email from a guy telling me he read this book and I need to read it. And when I looked at the cover, I was teasing you a little bit before. You guys look like you're in high school. You're both very young looking, although you're in your early 30s. You're 30, she's 31. You're both a fit, young, healthy looking. And then this journey is very intriguing, and how all of this on the way. We are dropping an episode this week with a friend of mine, my naturopath, practices functional medicine.
Yep.
I think there is a movement that way.
Yeah.
But you said something in your book, I thought. So the book is called Designed to Heal. Mm-hmm. And what's the subtitle?
God's plan for our food, what went wrong, and how to get back to it. And that's kind of how the book split up, those 3 big sections.
Well, and the thing I love about your book is the title just says it all. You don't have to guess. Here it is. Here you go. And I know there are books out here like this, but it's the first book I've read that I felt wasn't trying to sell a certain way of eating, a certain method, a certain food product. It felt like you're writing it from a space of love for your bride, and then honestly wanting to help people. Yeah. So I really do appreciate this book. And you said something. I've always said this. I've been working out all my life. I've worked out since I was 14. I played college sports. I've tried to be a healthy individual. And as much as I work out, I've discovered that I can't overwork bad eating.
Yeah.
And in your book, you said, I've said for years, it's about 85% eating and 15% the rest. You said 70%.
Yeah, you're more aggressive than me.
Well, when you said 7, I go, okay, I'm right. I mean, you said, at least, and I said, we're somewhere in there, but yeah. How important is food on the holistic person?
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's easily the most important, which is why I went 70, because I was like, I feel like that clearly shows it's the number one thing in my mind to our physical flourishing. I think, like I said, you can't outwork it. You can't outsleep it. You're probably not going to sleep well and not going to have productive workouts if you're not eating well. It's the fuel that God provided for us to flourish in our physical lives, and really more than physical, and their mental, emotional, spiritual lives as well. I mean, there's so much connection with especially our gut microbiome in terms of our mental health, which directly tends to our emotional health, and then there's so much with our spiritual health too. And so, yeah, I just think that food is the foundation. Like nothing else that you do, no supplements I I always like to call them supplements, not vitamins, because they are to supplement what you're eating, to get any maybe missing micronutrients you might have or that sort of thing, or have probiotics or whatever it might be. But they're not going to be enough on their own. And working out, I've had a friend who, he was seemed extremely fit. He was a biker. He was out on a 100-mile bike ride and had a heart attack. Doctors said it was because of what I was eating. It's no matter how fit you feel like you are, the food is always the foundation. Yeah, it's our fuel.
Well, you said something. You're tying in this design to heal implies spiritual, and you're linking, which I really appreciate this. You're linking the Bible. You're linking spiritual health to physical health. Well, here's a little bit of a problem in America. It seems to me that gluttony is the acceptable sin in the church.
Yeah.
As a 30-year-old man, what do you see regarding gluttony in the church and that relationship that we have with donuts and pastries on Sunday mornings?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. You're absolutely right. I think it's very clear that there's not at least thought behind it. I don't know how much of it is intentional and how much of it is just it's easy, it's cheap, it's convenient to get those sorts of things. People like them, of course. But I think that's part of the reason why I wrote this book, right? Is people just don't think about it. People don't think about, is there a connection between what I'm eating and my physical health and my spiritual health? And is there a way that the church and the leaders of the church can help to facilitate that growth, as opposed to just kind of living in the cultural norm, which is the pastries and the pizza and the donuts. And I feel like the thing I noticed too is it's most common in our kids and youth ministries, which is unfortunate, right? I mean, you want to start from the youngest you can to show and grow that important habit and show the connections between God made us a whole self, right? I mean, he didn't make a body and then something else that fills our body. We are one person. We're a body and a soul and a spirit together in one. It's not a difference. The Greeks or the Hellenistic world tried to separate those three, mind, body, and spirit.
When people say that's a Greek a concept, a philosophy. It's not biblical. Biblical is a holistic. When it says Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man in Luke 2:52, it's all of those together. Everything affects the other thing. And so you made a comment I want to ask you about. You said the cultural norm. Well, Philippians 3:20 says we are citizens of heaven. And then, of course, Romans 12:2, do not conform any longer. So what is, as a believer in Jesus, a fellow believer in Jesus, what should our response be to the cultural norm regarding diet and fitness and overall health?
Yeah. Well, I feel like, and this is something I try to get across the book, I don't know there's one right way for a Christian to engage in that, but I think probably two questions that I think we should always be asking about any topic, and food is one that we forget about a lot, is how am I glorifying God in this? And am I in bondage to my sin or to my flesh or sin in this? I think the bondage to flesh and sin is probably the most obvious with food, because a lot of times we are literally addicted to sugar, especially, but a lot of kind of over-processed foods. And one of the things I talk about too is that's not an accident. We do have personal responsibility for our actions, but we also don't live in a vacuum, and there are corporations and the business side of things that want to make you addicted to these things. They want to make things kind of unnaturally appealing and unnaturally tasty and that sort of thing, to the point where our taste buds are actually like transformed to need this unnatural kind of man-made, not God-made, not God-designed food. So when you talk about kind of like the cultural norm versus how a Christian should live in that, I think it's just a matter of asking those questions and making actual decisions based on how I can take steps to glorify God more, or maybe even just understand how I can glorify God more in those things. So yeah, I'm not going to prescribe a certain diet for every Christian to be on, or say you have to go to the gym 3 times a week if you're a Christian. Like that's not obviously how this works, or like what that would be legalistic and not very helpful for anyone. In fact, Paul even talks about in Romans to not pass judgment on someone for what they eat. He's talking about food being sacrificed to idols, not necessarily food for health, but same idea. Like I'm not passing judgment on someone for what they decide to eat or not, but I want to raise the question of how can I, especially like I said earlier, this is something we're doing 3 times a day. We're spending hours of our days every day, either making, preparing, grocery shopping, going to restaurants, whatever it is, eating food. So it's a big part of our lives. And yet we never ask that question the way we would have a lot of other things. We tend to ask the question like, how can I glorify God in this? Or what does God want me to do in this? How am I called in this? Whether it's work or your family or whatever else, other topics, big topics that take a lot of our time. We're more prone to ask those questions. But I think, again, kind of also coming back to the church question, is I think the church doesn't always lead us in asking that question about food. So all those things kind of wrap up in each other and just point us to, if my life is meant to glorify God, then I should be able to glorify God in the way I choose to eat. And I think on the most simple way to put it is I should glorify God by being satisfied in the food that He designed, and not just the food that the world is pushing on me, the cultural norm of like the over-processed, artificially dyed, artificially flavored, all those sorts of things, to the point where we're actually tuned in more to what the world wants us to eat than what God has designed for us to eat.
Well, one of the things about your book was refreshing. I thought, I've never read this. You talk about God's design for food, God's design for us to heal with our food. And I'm going to get into the negative stuff a little bit later here, but this was really cool for me. Can you talk to us about the shape and colors of foods?
Yeah.
How you see God in that?
Yeah.
I thought this was really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably the clearest example when we're talking about God designing food for us and for us to flourish, because it's something you can see. It's kind of tangible. So color wise, God designed a whole spectrum of colors for our foods. We've got all things from blue to orange to red to green to white and brown, like literally the whole spectrum of different colors. And typically that means the different colors kind of identify different micronutrients or different vitamins and minerals that those foods provide. And if we're eating across the span of those colors, we're actually going to be more kind of healthy. We're going to be more full of the micronutrients that we need to flourish physically. So that's one thing. I think that's awesome. And also part of that is there's all sorts of different colors across the world, right? So like Asia has different colors, and Africa has all these different colors, and America has different colors. So it's like you can see it across the geographical as well. And then the shapes is really also right. So at least in some cases, God designed the shape of food to mirror the part of the body that it helps to support. So some great examples are celery helps support bone health. Tomatoes help support heart health. Beet juice helps support blood health. And that, I mean, if you look at beet juice, it looks just like blood.
Oh yeah. Carrots,
to be the cross section of a carrot, helps support eye health. What are other ones? There's a lot of them.
Which one was the brain? Was it cauliflower or broccoli?
It was actually walnuts. Walnuts support brain health. Yeah.
It looks just like brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you said that, I went, oh, this is insane that God designed the shape of food to match the body. I mean, think about that. What is pizza match? I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Round.
Yeah, exactly. This is so intriguing to me. But we're
Yeah.
talking about like, I mean, I love pizza, whatever,
Yeah,
but
we all do,
let's
right?
talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
So these things like pizza and potato chips, these hydrogenated oils, these refined sugars,
Mhm.
these things, one of the things that we're seeing, and this part of having you on the show, Alex, is because you bring up some phrases that I've been hearing for about 5 to 10 years, well, maybe even longer, but they're really becoming prominent, and most of America still don't understand these phrases.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to read page 43 from your book. You said inflammation is the cause of most chronic diseases. And in the book, you went most, period, chronic, period, diseases, chronic inflammation is this was so powerful to me. Civil war in our bodies culminating in chronic disease. And you say, our body is quite literally attacking itself. That right there is a massive statement. And guys, I want you to just stop whatever you're doing and understand inflammation is killing us. Can you talk to us about inflammation and what we're learning about it?
Yeah. Well, and to start off, the quote that you read, the most chronic diseases caused by inflammation, that wasn't me. That was a PhD at the National Institute of Health. So this isn't some secret or something that I'm coming up with. This is actually like kind of scientifically known, and yet I feel like it's never something that anyone's ever talked about because we, I think in Western society, Western medicine, it's very easy to get very honed in on one specific symptom or one specific issue, and then try to fix that with one specific medication or surgery or whatever it might be. And we don't have this kind of holistic look of how our bodies work and kind of seeing each different ailment building on itself essentially. Mm-hmm. So the reason I even started learning about inflammation, because like I said earlier, Haley's disease is just inflammation of her colon. And that seemed surprising to me when I first heard that. I had never heard of inflammation being anything more than like you get a bee sting and you puffed up for a little bit and then it goes away. And that essentially is the idea, right? I mean, generally that's how it works. It's supposed to be your body uses inflammation as a tool to fight against invaders, whatever that invader might be. It might be a toxin, it might be an allergen, it might be a disease, or like something that might be a disease-causing pathogen or something. Any of those sorts of invaders, and it's meant to fight that off in an acute sense, and then go back to normal. But the problem is, in today's world, we are just bombarded with toxins. And conventional food, normal food that we all eat, that's covered in pesticides, it's full of genetically modified organisms. It's in and of itself, the ingredients of many things are just chemicals that we a lot of times don't know how they affect our bodies, especially not how they affect them in large amounts over a long time in the same they are eating alongside other chemicals and other pesticides and all these things. And basically the problem is we're continuing to put these toxins in our body over and over and over, these invaders in our body over and over and over again, to the point where the acute inflammation cannot stay acute. It has to become chronic. So your body is always inflamed, and this kind of immune response essentially is constantly happening to the point where your body can't even understand what is helpful and what is hurtful anymore. And that's what autoimmune disease is. Autoimmune literally means your immune system attacking itself. And that's what ulcerative colitis is. That's what a lot of other diseases are. But that's how inflammation kind of goes from this sort of seemingly harmless idea to a life of chronic disease, because your body is just full of these constant toxins with our typical Western diet, and our body doesn't know how to fight it off anymore. It just fights itself instead.
Well, it's interesting. We talked about the colors of foods, and I was telling myself a joke in my head. and I was laughing, but sometimes I talk to myself in my head, and I was laughing. I was like, well, brown is a color of food, but I mean, it seems like we have this brown diet: potato chips, fried chicken, pizza, French fries, hamburgers, and all these brown things. And it seems like there are some foods that, so I will have a certain food. It does. I don't know what I can tell you right now, but and I'll feel inflamed. My stomach will get distended, or alcohol. You wake up, your eyes are puffy. Things like this. This is like an acute inflammation. But if I'm doing brown all the time, if I'm eating processed foods all the time, if I'm drinking things refine, drinks with refined sugar, drinks with alcohol, things like this over time, it's going to develop this chronic inflammation. Is this what you're saying?
Exactly. Yep. And it's my
body fighting against itself.
Yeah. I mean, the longer it has to do that, the more it's going to fight against itself and be confused essentially on how to help you flourish and heal versus actually hurting itself. Yeah.
Well, and I just want to stress this to the guys. I don't think guys are realizing how much inflammation is affecting their lives and those they love. And here's the scary part. It's affecting their children. I mean, it's affecting their children. And so what's there's a couple problems with this. Can you talk about the cost of eating pollutants and poison and inflammatory foods versus the cost of eating whole foods that God designed?
Yeah. And do you mean cost as in money or cost as in, because that is a big question people have.
You got me. The cost of, let's talk about the financial cost.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that a big part of the middle section of my book is talking about cost, right? Literally in a lot of ways, financial, monetary cost. One of the reasons a lot of people will use for eating the typical Western diet is, well, it's cheap. I don't have a lot of money. I'm trying to save money. I have X, Y, Z bills. I have debt, whatever it is. And I get that. Like that's fair, right? I mean, we all have to manage our finances well. We have to steward what God's given us well. But at the same time, it is more than just financial costs, which I think is maybe what you're getting at in your question. Like there is a financial cost, and maybe if you're just trying to optimize that, which is something that our culture likes to do, is just optimize financial costs or kind of minimize that one piece of the equation. You might choose the ultra processed foods that never go bad because they're so packed with preservatives and they're kind of so far away from what God designed that they don't even resemble it at all. Is one way to think about it. But you have to count the whole cost, right? So there's future medical bills, there's insurance premiums, there's the pain and time that it takes to go through a chronic disease or ailment if you unfortunately have to go through that because of this chronic inflammation. So having, I think, this like longer term view of how we make these decisions, and also considering if this is something that God tends to prioritize. I talk a lot in the book about how I think it's almost surprising to our Western ears how much God talked about food and feasts and tables and all those sorts of things, and uses them as metaphors, symbols, and also just literal, the actual table. And God is talking about this a lot. God is prioritizing this a lot. That should be at least a pause of like, maybe we should consider, are we prioritizing this correctly, right? Because we're gonna spend the money or pay the cost, I guess you could say, of whatever we prioritize. The problem is we've just deprioritized food in our culture so much, partly because of our packed schedules. I mean, so many of us are just so packed, so busy that it's not even the money; it's the time. We don't want to set aside any time to make a home cooked meal, to sit down at the table with our kids, to have to cut something else out of our schedule to be able to do those things. So, there are costs. There might be some time, might be a little bit more money, but the long-term view of things, I think it's by far worth it when we're talking about fighting that inflammation, fighting that chronic pain, fighting, not having to go through the things that my wife went through. I think she would definitely say if we could go back and do it again, we would pay whatever the cost was to avoid what you had to go through, right? And I think anyone would say that once you've gone through it.
So good. Yeah, I've got organic chicken thighs in the thawing, and I'll bake those with olive oil.
Mhm.
I've got beets I'm gonna cook in there, and I'll roast some sprouts, and that's gonna take an hour. I could go to Burger King and get the world standard hamburger, the Whopper, and be back home in 10 minutes.
Right.
And it would probably cost me cheaper. But in the long run, I talked to my team about this. A priority in the short run is more efficient, but a value in the long run is what we're after. And so if we're not valuing food and we're just eating based because on need, we're going to poison ourselves. So let's go back to inflammation. I want to hammer this. It's like I want to just keep hammering it.
Yeah.
Give me your top. You've already mentioned it early on in the podcast. Give me your top 3 foods that we should absolutely avoid. They're like the inflammation of inflammation. You've already mentioned them, but I just want to review it. If these guys are going to go, okay, what do I need to cut out of my diet today? What are the first things you would tell them? First 3 things.
That's a great question. I think hydrogenated oils are definitely one of that comes immediately to mind. So what that is they take cheap plant-based like soybean or canola oil, and they put it through, which is already in and of itself something that we should probably avoid. And these kind of heart healthy, they call them, oils that they try to market them well, but really they're just cheap industrial products that are not helping our bodies at all. They're not even things that existed before the Industrial Revolution. So that's kind of a key in right there to avoid. But the hydrogenated version of that, which you'll find a lot in like a lot of processed foods for sure. So like even like peanut butter can have hydrogenated oil in it to kind of keep things smooth. And yeah, but back to the process. So what they do is they change the oil to be firm and solid like an animal fat, because the animal fat is what our bodies actually crave, and what actually works kind of in the cooking process. But they want to do it so cheap that they would rather mutate a fake industrial oil to then act like this animal fat that itself could have worked in its natural state. So I think that's one that definitely comes to mind. One that maybe I wouldn't say necessarily that this is a top 3 thing to avoid, but I think this is a really kind of hidden one, is kind of quote natural flavors. It's really just a hiding term for chemicals. I mean, there's no regulation on what can be considered a natural flavor. I mean, artificial flavors, even worse, right? I mean, they couldn't even convince them to let them to fit under the unregulated natural flavors banner. They had to be called artificial. So yes, artificial flavor, artificial dyes are definitely ones to avoid. But the natural flavor, I think, is so tricky because it's in things that we would think might be healthy.
100%.
But really, if you've seen the natural flavors, you probably just want to avoid it, because it's probably just as overprocessed as something that maybe isn't marketed as healthy, but you would see it and you think, oh yeah, that's not good for me. But it seems it's kind of like whitewashed a little bit, or greenwashed as they call it.
So what was your third one? There's a couple I'm thinking of. I'm wondering which one you're going to go with.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of like individual foods, let's see. I've given you kind of some ingredients, I guess. Which
where would you? Let me put one on the tee for you.
Yeah, do it.
Where would you put dairy?
So that's the interesting one. And conventional dairy, I would avoid. We don't drink any conventional dairy, but we do drink raw milk. Basically, I mean, it's the same idea with anything else that I've talked about so far, is like in the state that it came in the state that God made it in, I think it can be helpful and even healing for our bodies. The raw milk in its natural state is full of lots of incredible vitamins, minerals. It's got natural protein, natural healthy fat. It's got All kinds of good stuff, and the enzymes and natural living enzymes to help your body digest it. That's the key, really. When we drink conventional dairy that has been pasteurized, all that is dead. The food has kind of gone, and this is an idea that also can help us think through like what to and not to eat. If the food is kind of living, it's going to help us to live, to heal. But if it's dead, it's going to help us die, essentially. And that's the same thing with the dairy, right? So I think with the raw milk, from at least a trusted source, we have a great farm here around Charlottesville that they lab test everything, so everything's safe. Never had any issues. Been drinking it for a couple of years, never had a single problem. I know people get nervous about the raw milk, but the idea is from its source, the way God designed it, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, so what about, let's talk about refined sugar. In your book, you said sugar is poison. I couldn't agree more than that. So this, I know natural flavor might have some sugar, but this is a category on its own, right?
Yeah, well, for sure. Yeah. I mean, refined sugars. I think another stat that I pulled out of the book was, I might have the numbers exactly right, but basically it was like 100 years ago, people ate like 6 pounds of sugar. Today we're eating like 130. I mean, it's just insane.
Say that again. Say that again. I read that in the book. I've got it quoted here. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, like 100 years ago, people were eating 6 pounds of sugar a year. Today we're eating 130. We're eating more sugar in a month than they ate in a year. I mean,
and we wonder why we're fat and inflamed and dying of chronic diseases.
Yeah.
So sugar would be high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
Anything in candy.
Yeah.
Where would you put? Okay, so when we think of potato chips, French fries, that would be the hydrogenated oils, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because a potato inherently is not bad for you.
Right. It's when you're a lot of times for the deep fried, it's going to have the hydrogenated oils I talked about before, like I said, and then refined sugars. I mean, you find it everywhere. It's also a kind of an issue with the system, I guess, because corn is one of our subsidized crops, commodity crops they call them, where these farms, massive, not just like your local, like, oh, there's a cow over there, that farm. These like factory farms that are they're 5% of the farms, like in terms of quantity, they own 53% of the farmland in America. So 5% of the farms and 53% of the land. That's the system of sorts, the kind of big ag, big food that they're growing so much corn because the government's paying them to, and then they don't know what to do with it. So they're converting it into things like high fructose corn syrup and just putting it into everything because it's cheap, it's subsidized, it can obviously provide that dopamine hit that makes it so addictive.
It's addictive.
Yeah, and we are quite literally addicted, like in the truest sense of the word, to refined sugar.
So I wanted to spend a lot of time on inflammation and these foods like natural flavors, high fructose corn syrup / refined sugar, processed dairy products.
Right.
And what was the fourth one we talked about?
The hydrogenated oils.
And then downstream flavor, and then refined sugar. Yeah. But so we talk about inflammation and its effects on chronic disease. Recently, I've been reading that in the near future, we may have another organ in the body discovered, and it's the gut with this biome. In your book on page 112, and then also on 87, you said, essentially our food has been poisoned. Mm-hmm. The dawn of over-processed foods packed with sugar was only about 100 years ago. Since then, anyone could observe that our collective health quickly deteriorated. And you talk about processed foods and their effect on the gut. Yeah. So talk to me about this thing called the biome, AKA the gut, and how vital it is to human health as God designed it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really one of the most amazing things. And also, I think another one of the really obvious ways that you can see God having designed it all and being behind it all. So essentially our microbiome is trillions of bacteria that live in our gut and across our body, but mostly in our gut, that are quite literally invested in every single function of our body. So our cardiovascular, our hormones, our digestive, I mean, literally all of it. And like you said, it's something that we only recently discovered. I think maybe in the 90s, it was first kind of hinted at, and people are still more and more every day learning more about how important it is and how much it's affected by inflammation. And part of the issue of inflammation on the microbiome is it creates sort of a monoculture of bacteria. So this is always kind of a battle between the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. And the bad bacteria feed off of refined sugars and these kind of cheap oils, and that's their fuel. And then the good bacteria mostly feed off of what's called kind of prebiotic fiber, which is mostly found in like fruits and vegetables. So it's quite literally like, are you fueling the good bacteria that's going to help you breathe and pump blood and digest your food and all these things? And not to mention the mental health side of it. The microbiome actually produces 95% of your body's serotonin, which is obviously the hormone that helps you to feel happy, essentially. It's all made in your gut, not in your brain. So that's the gut brain axis is a whole nother like incredible topic that I don't know nearly as much about as I would like to, but I know it's amazing.
So when you say, so Alex, when you say living things bring life and dead things bring death, you say that in our gut or in our microbiome are how many trillion living things?
Trillions, at least.
Trillions of living things. So should we? So when you talk about, so we should be eating or even foods that have these living things in them as well, right?
Yeah.
So was that why you recommend if you're going to recommend one supplement, you recommend prebiotics?
Probiotics, actually. Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Probiotics.
Exactly. That's exactly the point, right? Is probiotics help to add more of those good bacteria to your gut to help to balance. When a lot of us have kind of an inherent disbalance based on if we're eating the normal standard American diet. It's just going to naturally fuel an imbalance in our gut. So probiotics are at least the first line of defense. Obviously, like we talked about already, there's nothing you can do to overcome if you're going to be eating the fuel for the bad bacteria. You're not going to be able to eat it or pick up probiotic supplements to be able to counteract that. But at least it kind of helps set the stage for the good bacteria to be able to flourish if you're also providing them with the fuel to grow and to have a diversity. That's one thing, is like a diversity of different positive probiotics versus kind of the monoculture of just the negative ones. That's what we're fighting.
In the book, you were very careful to say you're not opposed to processed foods,
right?
Because pickled foods, things
fermented.
Like this. Can you talk about fermentation, pickled foods, and their positive effect on the body?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for sure, that's a great point. I know I've said processed food throughout this podcast, and what I really mean is ultra processed food, which is defined as a multi-ingredient industrial formulation, essentially. So something that just does not exist in nature, and it's so different from its original source that you can't even recognize it. Essentially, that's what I mean by ultra processed, and that's also kind of like a industrial or an industry definition of that. But in terms of what you're saying, so there are some processes, right? So we can have processed food that are actually helpful for us. Fermentation is probably my favorite one. That's things like you ferment the dough for making sourdough. You ferment. Sure, pickles are made with fermentation. Sauerkraut, yogurt is fermented. These things, fermentation actually naturally culturates. Provides a culture for the positive bacteria to grow and to flourish, and they're actually what does the fermentation is the probiotics. So any fermented food is going to have natural probiotics in them that are. I don't have a source for this per se, but I would venture to guess they're going to be more helpful than a probiotic supplement that is just a pill. I do take those. I think they're helpful, but I think anytime you can use real whole foods as your supplements is always going to be just more helpful and more readily available for your body to absorb and digest and to use the way that it's intended to use.
Yeah, I really appreciate this. So, like, as I takeaways from the book for me are avoid foods that will create momentary or chronic inflammation. Eat foods that will build your microbiome, aka give you gut health. Avoid foods that will take away your gut, dead foods. And then, but but you didn't really stop there, which I appreciated, because there's an underlying current within our culture that's creating all of this, and it's this sedentary humanity, right? It's I work at a standing desk right now. You can see it. It's sitting, it's TV, it's desk jobs. It's not getting out. You talked about, I heard a phrase years ago, and you mentioned it on page 36 of your book. I like to say movement is medicine. And you talked about our ancient ancestors. They were active, constantly moving, always on their feet. You said, importantly, this constant movement was almost always with other people. Ancient communities were uniquely social people out of a level of necessity. Can you talk to us about movement and community and how important they are on overall health, the way God...
100%. I think that what you're saying is absolutely right. I think we are very sedentary. I know I've done the work from home, sit 40 hours a week life, and I can feel it in my body. I'm like, I have to move. I'm falling apart from not even moving. You think that's kind of counterintuitive, but the less I move, the more I feel like my body wants to break, which is so interesting. But yeah, I think one of the chapter you're referring to, the idea of the whole chapter is just kind of looking back at how humanity has existed for thousands and thousands of years, and kind of comparing that to how it lived in the last 200. I think I make the argument that more has changed about human life in the last 200 years than the last 2000 before that. And I mean, we just have everything so convenient, everything so right in front of us. We don't have to make the same sacrifices and the same effort to get things. I think food is a great example where most of society, you go back 250 plus years, of course, back to the ancient civilization for sure, their whole life revolved around getting food. It revolved around farming, it revolved around livestock, it revolved around making food and keeping your family sustained. Like that was the goal. That was the whole point. And we've gotten to the point where, of course, glorifying God, the main goal, but like in terms of like the day-to-day life, that's how they lived. But we don't have to worry about that, which in some ways is a blessing. Like we have lots of food for sure, and like we don't have to worry about starving or going out and catching our dinner. But at the same time, I think there was something beautiful in having to put in some effort and some sacrifice to getting your food, and that inherently making you move and inherently making you be with community, because that like natural intersection of movement, community, and food, I think really shows us kind of where we can flourish if we look back. I think community is a big one too. Like you said, I think we just were the most connected, but most lonely society that has ever existed. There's clearly something wrong. We just, especially the younger generations, just staring at our phones and scrolling TikTok and feeling anxious and depressed. And it's hard to see. And a lot of it's because there's not the same community that used to be necessary. And part of that also is not sitting around the table and not being with our family and not being with those we loved and sharing our lives in a true way. I think one of the things that's different about how people used to live and how we live today, maybe we know more facts about more people, but they would actually have a smaller, tighter knit group, but they would actually live life together. There was an actual meaningful connection, as opposed to kind of these quick hit dopamine hits that we get today and social media and such. So all that to say, the community and movement are definitely pillars of health, because like we've been talking about, our body, our self is more than just physical. All those things work together to help us flourish as a person.
Well, and you brought up a really good point that part of our community is our family. And I want to go back and look at this, this excuse, especially in this day and age, post-COVID, where people can work at home. We have a more flexible work schedule than we've ever had. for a man to say he can't have one meal a day with his family, yes, you can have one meal a day with your family. And if your job takes you away so early in the morning that you can't have breakfast and brings you home so late at night that you can't eat with your family, it's time to quit your job.
Yeah.
Because your family's more important than being gone 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I think that is a perfect time to, one, build community with those you love, and two, take the time to prepare at least one healthy meal a day. For us growing up, we did. In fact, I have a 31, a 29, a 27-year-old son, and I interviewed two of them on my podcast this week, and they both talked about meals together. We always had meals together, dinner and breakfast, to the best of our ability. I think that's very, very important for men. So let me go back. One last thing. I know we've been spending a lot of time on diet, which is the major portion of your book, but we aren't moving. We aren't in community, and we're sitting at our desks doing jobs. Ironically, even though we're spending so much time sitting, we aren't getting enough rest and sleep. Can you speak to rest and sleep and overall health?
Yeah. I mean, you definitely are hitting all the key points, because that's probably the other big pillar, right? Is rest. I think we think about rest wrongly a lot of times in our culture. I mean, a lot of times we think rest, we think watching a movie, watching TV, scrolling on our phones. And a lot of times those things aren't truly restful at all. In terms of our body, rest, like fasting and sleep itself, are both times where our body doesn't have to be digesting food, and therefore it has a chance to heal. So if your body is always constantly needing to digest, either digest food because we're eating so much or so high quantity, or because it doesn't have the necessary time to rest, it actually can't heal. So that's why fasting is such a powerful healing tool. I think also another great example of God designing the whole thing. Like when we fast, a lot of times we fast for healing, and the actual act of fasting is a rest for your body and helps your body physically heal itself. I think it's just so cool to see that.
That's powerful that the fasting is healing.
Right. Exactly. The actual act God uses. It's like, man, if we were so obedient to him, maybe things would work out better for us.
That is so powerful.
But in sleep, I mean, your body, another example of kind of going back in time and looking at how people used to live. It used to be, even you go back to like 1910, people would sleep 9 hours a night. But if you go back further than that,
there was no light.
Right. You can't do anything after dark. The night doesn't stop us at all in today's world, which again, I mean, there's some pros to that, but there's a lot of cons to it too. I think we don't wrestle with the cons because we don't have to. And sleep and rest, and true, actual peaceful rest is so vital for our body's healing. And we just don't have it. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. God designed our bodies. This is pretty profound. Our bodies are designed to sleep a third of our life. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't that crazy?
That's nuts.
It's crazy. Hey, Alex, we're out of time here, but is there anything I forgot to cover in your book that you're thinking, hey, I really think this needs to be mentioned?
No, you did an awesome job. I mean, I really appreciate it. Clearly you read it and you remembered a lot of it, and it seemed impactful to you. So I mean, I'm super honored to be on here. I wrote this book as a passion project. I never really expected anyone else to really read it, to be honest. But I mean, it's amazing that people have, and that you did, and that you were impacted enough to invite me on here. So I thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't know what your social media following. I don't know anything about you except for you wrote a book. The book was clearly not motivated by money or by some kind of scheme, and the book had a biblical foundation. And it was. I think it'll be obvious to our listeners that you're not this, PhD in astrophysics or something. You're a very intelligent man who wrote a book because you love your bride. And I think it's really going to be helpful for guys. So how can these guys follow you and what you're doing? Any further research in this area, and get a hold of your book? Yeah,
absolutely. So I do have an Instagram page. It's design.2.heal. So you're welcome to follow me there. Reach out. You can send me a direct message. I'll reply. And the book is called Design to Heal: God's Plan for Our Food, What Went Wrong, and How to Get Back to It, by Alex Morgan. And you can find that on Amazon, probably the easiest way. And just order it from there. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey man, I appreciate you having on the show. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thanks so much, Jim.
Hey guys, if you listened to today's episode and you liked it and you're a listener but you have not yet subscribed, guys, give back to this ministry by just clicking that subscribe button. And also, if you got a bro that needs a little health kick in the butt, needs a little healthy perspective from the Bible about what it looks like to live a life of abundance, man, send this link on over to him. I think he'll be blessed for it. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. And remember, feel the wet sand on the arena floor. Hear the deafening roar of the crowd. Taste the sweetness of victory. Smell the stench of battle. Get in the game. Get dirty. Grind it out. Use God's temple as a wise steward and be a man.